This episode of FinTech Insider is brought to you by Fireblocks, the stablecoin infrastructure platform trusted by top global businesses such as Visa, BNP Paribas, Revolut, and more. Fireblocks powers over $100 billion in monthly stablecoin volume, helping PSPs, fintechs, remitters, and banks issue, move, and manage stablecoins, all securely and with built-in compliance. Get complete control to build your stablecoin strategy, manage liquidity, and on-off ramp in over 60 currencies, all at scale. Learn more at fireblocks.com.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
Money is moving faster than ever, across borders, between people, and even from machine to machine. Real-time payments and account-to-account technologies are reshaping global payments, challenging the systems that have long defined how we pay and how we get paid. Real-time payments are becoming a powerhouse of the global economy, enabling capital to move faster. Can the payments infrastructure keep pace with these changes? I'm Benjamin Ensor, and in this episode of FinTech Insider Insights, we're exploring the rapid evolution of the payments landscape, the modernization of payments infrastructure, the future of real-time payments, and how account-to-account payments are starting to change commerce. Joining me to unpack this fast-moving problem is our expert panel of guests today. First of all, we have Helena Forrest, Executive Vice President, Product and Commercial for Real-Time Payments at Mastercard. Welcome to the show, Helena. It's great to have you on the show and here in the studio with us. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about you and a little bit about your role at Mastercard, please?
Thank you, Benjamin. Absolutely great to be here. In terms of my role at Mastercard, so I'm responsible for delivering our product strategy, product development, and commercialization of account-to-account real-time payments. And that covers a whole set of infrastructure capabilities. So maybe not everyone knows, but actually Mastercard powers 12 markets around the world with our technology for real-time payments and batch payments. And more recently, also, we are really focused on developing value-added services on top of these rails, really to help our banking clients, fintech customers to drive more innovation, unlock new use cases on top of these real-time payment rails. And yeah, that's what I'm usually busy with. Great to be here.
Fascinating role. I can't imagine you get bored very often. And now we also have a warm return to the podcast for Andy Sacre, Head of Payments at Monzo. Welcome back to the show. Monzo's obviously been very busy and a lot of our listeners are well aware of Monzo, but can you tell us a little bit about your role and a little bit about, what you've been up to in payments at Monzo?
Yep, good to be back. So I run payments for Monzo, and that's everything from card issuing and manufacturing and getting cards into people's wallets and purses, right through to our core banking infrastructure, our connection to faster payments, international payments, open banking, all of that sort of stuff. And I responsible for that over a sort of commercial and product lens as well. What have we been up to since we last spoke? We're building some stuff I can't talk about just yet, which is great fun, and we'll come and tell you guys about that at some point soon, I'm sure. But we've also we've recently just launched a product that sits on top of faster payments and a couple of other payment types that allows customers to undo a bank transfer. It's this really small, cute feature that hopefully you never have to use. I'm ashamed to say that despite my job role, I have had to use it in real life, which is after paying the wrong plumber. But yeah, a couple of things like that I think shows that there's still room in innovation for faster payments.
It is a very cool little feature. And you also have a very busy job. And I'm also delighted to welcome Ugne Buraciene, Group Chief Executive at Payabl. It's really great to have you on the show, Ugne. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about Payable for people who haven't come across the company and a little bit more about your role.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and really great to be here with such esteemed panelists and the ones that are already not here for the first time, which is great. So for those who don't know Payable that well, we're a payment service provider, and we consider ourselves as the Lego of the payment industry. Saying that, we really mean it because we incorporate all financial services to our clients that they may require. We're mainly focusing on B2B, and that involves acquiring, card issuing, and also type of bank accounts or so-called business accounts as well, to incorporate for our clients and merchants, that they would be able to use that infrastructure seamlessly in one place. So we're a very peculiar payment player. We're not just an acquirer in a sense. And my role, as obviously as the global CEO, is to run the company and the group through all of the challenges across all of the markets that we operate. And we have quite a few of those. So it's definitely also a very interesting role, and a role that keeps on teaching me quite a few things as well.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to all three of you. I always love to start with customers. I always think customers is a great place to start. And of course, in payments, you have two groups of customers. You have the people who are buying things, the sort of consumers, the buyers, and the people who are selling things, typically the merchants and so on. Andy, I'd love to start with a sort of customer or sort of consumer perspective from you, and just think about, what are some of the challenges that still face customers? Because we don't always think about payment. It's just sort of something you sort of do until it doesn't work. So how have payment systems got better from a customer perspective over the past few years? And what are some of the problems that still face customers that maybe you hear from Monzo customers complaining about?
Yeah, definitely. This is really interesting, because I think if you look at the UK, we've had a really mature payments stack since about 2008. And so payments have been fast, easy, fairly instant to settle since then. So the question we ask is like, right, how do you make that better? If you can get money to somebody within a few seconds, safely, easier, what's next? What's the next version of that? I mentioned it earlier, but our latest innovation is a way to help customers kind of just keep themselves safe if they've sent the wrong money to the wrong person or included the wrong reference, and they can undo that and fix it and send it again if they like.
You're basically putting in a sort of 1 second delay or a 2 second delay on a payment, is that?
Yeah, it's
maybe technically more complex than that, but that's what it looks like.
No, it's almost as simple as that. It came from like a hack day idea. It was built in a couple of days, put out and tested with a small group of customers to get some feedback. But I look, they loved it. You can set the timer anywhere between, I think it's 15 seconds and a minute, just to kind of take the pressure off. It is designed just for that everyday banking moment of people being busy and in a hurry, and the last thing they want to spend their time thinking about is making a faster payment.
Ugne, what about from the merchant perspective? I mean, merchants often feel like they're at the sharp end of payments because they're the ones who have to sort of deal with the chargebacks. The fraud often hits the merchants. I mean, sometimes it hits the customer too. But what are some of the sort of challenges that you're hearing from from the merchants, or some of the problems you're trying to help the merchants tackle?
Sure. Chargebacks is definitely a good point to mention, but I think if you look at the sort of the infrastructure and the place that our clients are operating, it's very complex, right? So in most cases, they will be selling their services across the globe, and they have clients paying in different currencies with different payment methods. So the complexity actually for them comes from the fact, how do we get those payments? How do we make the experience seamless for the end user purchasing that service or goods in this case, and how to also do it in a way that it is compliant, that the bottom line doesn't bleed completely. So the challenges are actually quite few and quite complex in a sense of the what they can provide for the end consumer, how to get all of those payment options, what are the right payment options also for those said clients, and then managing all of that within their own infrastructure and their own CRMs and systems, making sure that that they reconcile and that they know what the client is ultimately, paying. So it's a very difficult landscape, and I'm happy to say that companies like Payable are there, and not only us, to help the merchants navigate through all of those challenges, as we are the experts, and in most cases we are very well equipped to operate in those markets, and we can be the advisory partner that they need, and also not only from the advisory side, but also from the technical side. So from the technical side, making it easier and reducing the complexity in where they operate. And of course, not forgetting fraud prevention and chargebacks. This is also one of the things that is definitely, I'm sure that not once going to be mentioned during this podcast. And when you take all of those things, together, it's a pretty hefty environment, to be operating in.
Helena, there's a whole bunch of really interesting points that I'd love to unpack there. But one of them is that point that it's easy to assume that payments in your own country work just like payments in every other country, and that sort of payments are kind of the same all around the world. But of course, that's not true, is it?
No, absolutely not. And, Mastercard, obviously, with a global footprint from the cards perspective, and then being live in 12 markets from instant payments perspective, we absolutely see that. There are such huge differences and nuances domestically. So when you try to patch that together cross-border, that certainly increases complexity across multiple dimensions. Technology is usually the one that is the easiest to solve for. Also, there are absolutely different standards and quirks that you need to be aware of. But a lot of this is also driven just by different regulatory environments, right? Different AML, KYC requirements, sanctions, and so on and so forth. And also different ecosystem players. Certain countries allow participants to be not just banks, but also PSPs, wallet providers. So that just adds to that value chain and relatively complex kind of puzzle that needs to be assembled to appear seamless and safe and secure to the end consumer or the merchant. So that transparency, speed, security is incredibly important. And this is what we are all thriving for. But it is not always easy to achieve. But I think over the last probably, especially the last 5 years, I think we have absolutely seen significant improvements, incredible innovations in that space, new participants entering that space and really, shaking up the more legacy players. Certainly from Mastercard's perspective, and Ugne, you touched on that in terms of keeping the consumers safe and having that fraud prevention capabilities is something that we have and continue to invest heavily into, something that we want to continue providing to our banking customers and fintech clients so that they can keep their customers safe.
I also think one other point that's interesting about the difference in countries is the habits, because each payer, each customer, we have habits. There's ways we've paid for things in the past, and sort of the easiest way to do anything is to do it the way you did it before. And so you do see these patterns between different countries where people are used to paying in a particular way, and it can be quite hard sometimes to sort of nudge people into new systems. Not young people so much, old people like me. Changing habits, it takes time. But just going back, before we sort of talk more about some of the challenges that need to be faced, you made a really good point about all the changes we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years. And we tend to sort of take them a bit for granted. But, just from a sort of Mastercard perspective, what are some of the big changes we should be most pleased about over the last sort of 5 to 10 years? Because we sort of take the innovation that's happened for granted. But actually, if we reflect back, there has actually been quite a lot of change, hasn't there?
Absolutely. So I guess if we just continue the topic of cross-border, I would say there are probably 3 kind of main themes that I would group them into. So one is we're certainly seeing from real-time payments perspective that domestic success is now being tested, I would say, cross-border as well. So initially, you see more and more countries developing bilateral interlinkages with other domestic real-time payment schemes.
Particularly like the Nordic countries, for example.
Yes, for example, but also in APAC. That's quite a well-developed kind of bilateral setup. And then, the majority of you would have heard of the initiative Nexus, that was coined initially by the BIS, but will be going into implementation by 2027, where 5 countries in APAC will be interlinking their domestic instant payment systems with one common set of rules and schemes to really enable that speed, interoperability, transparency, and lower cost to the end consumers. So it is initially focused on the P2P flows. So that's incredibly exciting. In addition to this, I would say it's almost every week we see some type of announcements of partnerships between digital wallets.
Yeah.
That's another way of, I guess, enabling some of these flows. And probably the third one that is worth mentioning is the new tech and kind of blockchain-enabled capabilities, whether proprietary or open source, definitely enjoying some test scenarios in the industry, I would say.
We need a longer podcast. One of the things I would like to talk about is just briefly talk about the UK, not because we happen to be sitting in the UK, but because it's actually quite an interesting market because of the way the government and the Bank of England has sort of laid out a national payments vision and are trying to sort of modernise the payments infrastructure. Maybe I can come to you, Andy, first and just sort of say, to what extent does the sort of government action to try and modernise payments and so on, how much does that matter to you and your customers? Are you spending a lot of time thinking of that, or is it actually not that significant to you? Without wishing you to criticise the British government, obviously.
I'm not going to do that. Look, I think between like HM Treasury and the Bank of England, they've got a really difficult job in motivating the industry to upgrade its infrastructure. And because we've already got faster payments and settlements pretty good in this country, like we're at sort of the forefront of a lot of things like speed, ease of access, regulatory environment. It makes it quite hard to say, well, what's the benefit of doing all this? Because payments won't get faster and easier and maybe not cheaper as well by doing the national payments vision and coming up with the new infrastructure. So I think corralling the industry and getting everybody together to say, right, we're going to upgrade the pipes and it's going to make it easier to run and it's going to make it more scalable and future-proof is the important message. That's the important bit. The benefit to customers is going to be fairly negligible in the short term, I think. Payments won't be faster, easier, cheaper because they're those things already.
What's your view, Ugne, from maybe more from a merchant perspective or from a sort of non-UK perspective? Is there ways to make things faster, cheaper, better for the merchants, perhaps?
I love how Andy basically paints this picture of speed and efficiency, and I'm really jealous. I wish that I could say that this is how it is for a regular merchant or for a regular client operating. Even let's not go very far. Let's not go to Asia. Let's not go to Latin America. That's a whole different story. Let's say we're just a merchant operating in Europe and UK. Let's say, right? Even Europe alone is very fragmented. If we look at the payment options that are there. And all of the things that the merchant have to take into account while operating in those markets is definitely not cheap, definitely not fast, and in some cases not really even frictionless from the side of end consumer and how the checkout experience looks like, because in a lot of the cases there is not really full control of how that experience looks like at the end of the day, right? So I think we're still quite far away from having it all completely, unified in some even European markets, alone. There are definitely initiatives. Also, Vero is coming into play in Europe shortly. So there will. I'm really looking forward to having the same statement as Andy to say that actually, the improvement will not be significant, but actually anything that can be done in those markets and in the fragmentation that we currently have for merchants, I think it would be a very significant improvement, right? Both from cost perspective and accessibility and the fragmentation alone. So having everything, a little bit more better organized.
Thank you. Helena, you've already given us a couple of examples, but if you've got any more examples of where other markets can learn from, markets around the world that are modernizing their payments landscape, that countries like the UK, other European countries, or indeed people anywhere in the world should be sort of looking to, which are some of the most interesting markets?
I think it's a difficult question because, again, having that experience and track record and presence in multiple markets around the world, you see that the starting point is different. The ecosystem participants are different, and therefore the demands, the needs, and the priorities differ. So I don't think you can ever have that kind of apple-to-apple comparison.
It's not a competition, but it's about where
it's
can
not
you
a
learn,
competition.
who can you
No,
learn
absolutely. I guess it depends on what the priorities are. And Ugne was bringing up a good point, because if we think about real-time payments capabilities and infrastructure, the initial kind of birthplace is domestic. But then as soon as we start thinking about merchants who have maybe a regional footprint or a global footprint, I guess the importance of anything that is future-proof and can cater for these kind of needs of participants that have not just a domestic needs, but cross-border needs is incredibly important. So having that modern, flexible infrastructure that enables evolution, whatever that evolution may be in 5 to 10 years' time. I'm sure, many of us a year ago wouldn't have imagined that, I don't know, agentic pay would be a thing. So therefore, it's difficult to predict. None of us have a crystal ball to say exactly how consumers or businesses will be paying in 10 years' time. But having a modern, resilient, flexible infrastructure that enables that evolution and progression is, I think, incredibly important. So from our perspective, we are ready and incredibly excited to support the national payments vision in the UK and bring all the learnings that we have developed across the 12 markets between deploying FPS in the UK and kind of really bringing the UK to the forefront of account to account is something that, we're incredibly excited about and really ready to do.
What are some of the... Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, just something very quick also to add to what was just mentioned. Adoption is really key, right? You can have, changes and you can make, payments, better. And account to account is a very good example because it does offer a significant improvement from both sides, from the user experience and from the merchant side in terms of cost as well. So I think that's also very crucial because adoption is driven by the end consumer. And if the checkout experience is not seamless and there's no incentive to move to another option, then it's a real struggle to make those changes as was already mentioned before.
That's definitely true. I suppose the question is, are there ways to encourage people to change their behavior? Can you encourage people to embrace a new system? And I think there are ways that can be done, but sometimes that means that, the merchant or someone has to give away a bit of margin. And as you rightly say, it has to be a really good, easy customer experience, isn't it? We
launched a product about a year ago, which was it's a way to top up your Monzo balance using open banking APIs. So top up your Monzo balance with another bank account's cash using only the Monzo app.
It's backward people who haven't got their main current account at Monzo. Well, what are they thinking?
One for another day. But it's really slick. And like most people in the UK, when you want to move money from one place to another, you'll log into the place where the money is and you'll push the money out of that balance into where you want it to go. Whereas this feature is very much the other way around. You log into the destination and you pull the money across. And we've seen great uptake of that. And it's really like customers have really got into that pull the money mindset rather than push the money mindset. And it feels very natural when you're using it. You're kind of like, why hasn't it always been like this?
But there's a lot of work that went into the user experience to
tons.
Get that design right. Ugne, I'd love to come back to you on that the infrastructure point that Helena was making. So from a sort of merchant standpoint, what are some of the infrastructure challenges that are maybe making, those cross-border payments so much harder? So you've got, I don't know, a company in Italy or Greece that's exporting food to Finland or Britain or whatever. What is it in the infrastructure that is making it so much harder for merchants? I suppose I'm asking why cross-border payments are so hard. I mean, I know why they're hard, but what are some of the biggest problems for merchants with the cross-border payments?
Oh my God, many. Name a few. Even if you look at certain countries who have different let's take an example of different currencies, right? So even that alone is quite a big challenge if you're operating, and that also impacts speed. So the time of the transactions and how fast, those, would take place between the collection of the funds and also the settlements of the funds. But I think we're coming back to the same point, is that the fragmentation is the hardest bit, right? So the fragmentation and the challenge of getting all of that aligned for your needs of your end consumer, and offering that experience in a completely seamless and frictionless way, right? So that's why we see a lot of other options coming up that the merchants are also willing, to uptake, because that does increase the speed of how fast they can also receive the funds. Because ultimately, for any business, the way that you look at it is in a very simple terms. They want to make sure that they have the cash, to do and to operate in all of the things. And the faster they have it, the better it is, right? So the infrastructure is different from every payment method, right? If we take cards is great. Cards is all already laid out, and even then there's some still issues that remain in terms of settlements and settlement speed and cross-border payments in those cases. But there are many payment options that rely on different rails, right? So they're definitely not instant in some cases, and they're not cheap. So operating even in friendly countries that you think that are not that far one from another still imposes quite a lot of challenges for merchants alone. So even from currency perspective, from the speed and from the time that they can also utilize the cash flow.
And I suppose just the administrative cost, the complexity of managing multiple systems.
Correct. And also, when you think about it, we deal with multiple large, merchants all across different markets. In most cases, their payments team will be larger in some cases than some of our companies are in the payments industry, right? So you would have clients that have a payment team of 350 people. And you ask yourself, why is that? Well, there is a reason for that. If you're operating in more than a couple of countries and a couple of regions, and you have different, billing options, and it's really, really, really complex. You have to take care of a lot of things for different markets, and it makes it very, very hard, to operate. So it's important that we have partners and players like Mastercard as well, who are offering the right infrastructure for us as payment providers also to utilize. So we rely on those, to bring, products that make life easier for our clients. And our end goal ultimately is just to streamline as much as we can, but we can only do so much if the infrastructure doesn't stretch, right? So if there's nothing happening at the other end, there's only so much that I can improve the payment page, or the way that it looks, or the speed of the settlement, even if I bring the settlements forward to the merchant. So we are very reliant on what happens around us, and I suppose that's the beauty of payments as well. So we are there to make it better, but we ultimately have to always rely on the infrastructure surrounding us, right? So any improvements there are very significant for us, and then we pass it on also to our merchants.
Wonderful. That's a really good summary of and a passionate summary of some of the challenges facing merchants today. Thank you. So we'll just take a quick break, and then after the break, we're going to discuss how innovation in payments can help solve some of the problems facing customers and merchants today. Though I feel like the summary of what we just discussed is that actually for customers it's pretty easy, and for merchants it's a bit of a nightmare. So we will be back very shortly.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
In today's fast-changing digital world, proving your company is trustworthy isn't just important for growth, it's essential. And that's why Vanta is here. Vanta helps companies of all sizes get compliant fast and stay that way with industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. So whether you're a startup tackling your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or an enterprise manager vendor risk, Vanta's trust management platform makes it quicker, easier, and more scalable. Vanta also helps you complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, so you can win bigger deals sooner. The results? According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers slash over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive. Establishing trust isn't optional. Vanta makes it automatic. Visit vanta.com/insider to sign up for a free demo today. That's vanta.com/insider.
Welcome back to FinTech Insider Insights. Before the break, we talked about state of play in payments today. Now, let's look ahead at how innovation in payments can start to solve sort of problems for customers and merchants and fuel the growth of the world's economies. Helena, I'd love to start with you, because we've talked about real-time payments a couple of times, but why is real-time payments important? I mean, if I get my money today, that's good. If I get it tomorrow, that's not so good. Why are real-time payments important? Because it doesn't sound as if it is important, but it is important. Why should anyone care about real-time payments versus batch payments? I mean, what was wrong with what we did in the past? The past was great. Who needs real-time?
Well, I think real-time payments, what people very obviously associate with them is speed, right? Speed was kind of a number one reason. And it does differ, again, from country to country. And whether that is a developed economy like in the UK, where you have already tons of options and obviously expectations both on the consumer and business side are incredibly high. So introducing anything new just comes with a lot of challenges, and you need to be so much better than what you have today. It's quite different maybe in other parts of the world where real-time payments are really an enabler for financial inclusion. It's almost like the first digital payments capability that brings economic growth, because it just brings unbanked population into a financial digital ecosystem with almost a relatively easy, I would say, and lightweight banking-like capabilities that could be facilitated through wallet providers, telcos, and therefore can, if supported through the right policies and regulation, enable that adoption relatively fast. Not just for the consumer, so talking also about merchants, especially micro merchants in many countries. That, again, is an incredibly important tool to bring these micro merchants into the financial ecosystem, help them build a credit history, enable them to access new and additional payment means. So if I think about one of our customers, Thailand, is one of the success stories that most people associate with real-time payments alongside India and Brazil. So in Thailand, Prompt Pay enabled exactly that, bringing in consumers and micro merchants in incredibly rural spaces into that digital ecosystem, being able to cater for emergency disbursements during COVID. Again, leveraging that kind of capabilities from real-time payments perspective.
So we're partly here talking about the sort of shift from cash to digital payments. And then because it's digital, it then can be, and often is real-time. Am I right? It's partly the shift from cash to digital, and because
I think that secular shift is definitely touching on cash, can touch in some cases also some debit card flows as well. But yeah, cash is certainly a key area, especially in emerging economies, that is addressed through the introduction of real-time payments. Absolutely.
Because, of course, banks used to, I'm not going to pick on Monzo here because Monzo wasn't around 20 years ago, but, banks used to sort of sit on cash for 2 or 3 days and make quite a decent turn on it. If you're sitting on enough cash for, even for just a couple of days, you can make quite a decent turn on it. So that, Ugne, that faster flow of money, how important is that to merchants? How much do your merchant customers sort of care about the real-time payment versus just it settling and it going through properly? Do you get any sense from your customers about how important real-time is to them?
Sure. I said I'm not going to touch other areas in the world, but I think here there's a few very good examples and also already mentioned. Our customers and our merchants demand real-time payments, right? So in the markets where it's already available, we don't even have an option. So we have to basically make sure that we are able to deliver those. And if you talk about, for example, Brazil with Pix, and you talk about UPI, in India, for a payment service provider not to be able to offer those options, it means that you're already at disadvantage and you're disadvantaging your clients. So one, I think, is driven again by the adoption of the market. So if the market shift and the end users and the end consumers are utilizing a certain option, then of course merchants would want to use that as well. Now, having said that, it is real time again for the consumers and for the infrastructure in terms of there. But when you operate again globally, and some of the merchants are not even located in Brazil, but they are servicing clients there as well. It again has some issues there, but mainly that's resolved by providers like payabl and other payment service providers. We make sure that we bridge that gap between the settlements and and the cross-border transactions for them. But I think the question really is not that whether we want to or whether they want to. I think that it's just they have to, because otherwise their competition will be better. The checkout experience will be easier. And actually, we did a State of European checkout report, which is not related now to Brazil, but in general. And 43% of end consumers clearly stated that they would abandon their checkout if it's not smooth or it's not transparent in the way that basically it's charged. So that means that also no returning customers for a checkout experience that is not good, right? So not having the right options, not having transparent information, having a smooth checkout experience is a really big impact. So therefore, merchants have to offer the most appropriate options. And also there's consumer trust, right? So consumer trust certain payment options, and of course for them there's a lot of benefits if it is real time, right? So they can top up the account ultimately very fast, and they don't have to wait or rely, on a certain time frame. That means that they can transact and ultimately get to the point where they want to be. So either purchasing a service or goods online.
Andy, one of the other topics I'd love to explore is sort of account-to-account payments. Now, obviously, many countries around the world have had sort of some form of account-to-account payment for a long time, where you could move money from one bank account to another bank account. Certain countries like the States didn't really have that, but many other countries did have it. It was always a bit of a clunky experience. But then over the last few years, we've seen a number of developments, notably things like open banking and so on, that suddenly enable a whole wide variety of account-to-account payments. But it's quite hard to communicate that to customers and consumers about, like, what is this? What's new? How do you think about account-to-account payments? Do you see a lot of potential for it? Are you seeing adoption of it? Are you trying to drive adoption of it more widely among sort of Monzo customers?
I've often got like a love-hate relationship with open banking payments, and I want them to succeed, and I think it's good in some use cases, but I think in other use cases it's sort of almost sort of forced on customers, and they're like, "Hey, my card just works really well here. Why would I do anything else?" So I think it's got to be use case led. It's got to be really clear and easy for customers to do. The feature I mentioned earlier, where like moving money around various bank accounts by only opening one app, is really compelling for customers. They really get it. Switching your card number for your account number and sort code at checkout when you're buying something online sometimes isn't really compelling. Like the thing the customer wants to do is buy the thing,
not faff around for ages in a checkout box.
Exactly. I think what it lacks at the moment is when you tap your card at a coffee shop, or you're buying your Oasis tickets or whatever it is you're doing, there's this synchronous communication that's going on behind the scenes. This kind of magic between the acquirer and the issuer, saying like, right, are we doing this? Is the payment happening?
Are we calling Mastercard magic here?
Yeah,
I think it's all a bit magic, really, the way it works. But there's this big sort of open communication line between the acquirer and the issuer in the scheme that make all that happen. Whereas a faster payment and an open banking payment is asynchronous. So it's kind of like, I don't like using the term fire and forget, but it is like, the money goes and then it arrives, but there's not really this kind of magic in the middle. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the huge opportunity, is for somebody to step in and provide some of that overlay.
Helena, I'm sure you've got strong views on this, but it is interesting because the longer you look at sort of account-to-account payments, the more you appreciate the infrastructure that Visa and Mastercard have built, and American Express and others have built over the years to do precisely some of those sorts of things in the background. Particularly, actually, we talked much earlier about sort of fraud and security and so on. What's your view on account-to-account payments? Which is a big topic. I realize there's lots of different ways account-to-account payments work, but how do you think of them at Mastercard?
I mean, I completely agree with what Andy just mentioned. And again, we should remember that real-time payments are born out of a domestic kind of need rather than with the intention to be global. It is domestically regulated, it is domestically run, supported, and so on and so forth. So it makes it quite difficult to be interoperable, to be standardized, and so on and so forth. But equally, I think the industry realizes these type of challenges, right? And certainly on the domestic front, I think there is quite a lot that could be done on top of the real-time payment rails. So we have recently announced our service launch of Mastercard Account-to-Account Protect. And that really focuses on closing some of these gaps that faster payments currently have, where ultimately consumers, they don't necessarily understand the differences between the different payment means that they're using at a checkout experience, right? But they do expect that a bank fixes a problem if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. So if something goes wrong with my payment, it doesn't matter how I made the payment, I would likely turn to my bank to fix. So what we're trying to address is really that, challenge for the UK banks to deal with the unhappy path, but more importantly, actually to help them prevent the unhappy path. So it's really investing into the consumer fraud risk capabilities and a successful product that has been in the market for quite some time, and really taking it to the next level by enhancing these with new data sets and capabilities so that we can kind of help prevent and protect the consumers, but then also help banks deal with the unhappy paths if it does happen, and therefore facilitate a process and tooling for dispute resolution. That is an example where domestically, some of these gaps could be closed, and we're certainly trying to leverage our assets capabilities, but also experience from that global perspective and bring them as much as possible into the domestic markets.
Thank you. What's your view on this, Ugne? Do you have a strong view on account-to-account payments?
I think I have to say that I'm with Andy because of what I see as the issues from the merchant side. We talk to clients a lot, and we also attend a lot of events, and I participate in a lot of panels. And we talked about open banking, I think, more than about anything else, to be honest. And I think the feedback that we're getting is kind of a mixture. I think everyone is very well aware that it could be ultimately a very good option, but there's still some operational issues and not equal user experience as well on the other side as well. So open banking is not the same everywhere because it does depend on the bank and the APIs of the banks, right? So if we talk just purely about open banking, I think it has its place. I think we still haven't seen it developed fully to its shape and form, and at least in the terms of PIS, right? Of course, there's many use cases for open banking, and Andy mentioned, aggregating accounts, and something that, that I think it's really a brilliant thing, and there's still, I'm sure, many use cases that haven't been, really utilized. But from the pure, movement of funds for the end consumer, I think we still have a bit of a way to go. It's not as frictionless as card payments for sure in some markets, but still the interest from the merchants are there, And again, in some markets, because of the adoption of certain payment methods, the merchants don't really have a choice. So they have to really make sure that they are offering and they're competitive in those markets as well. So my personal view is that I'm sort of also in this love-hate relationship. I definitely see its place and its use, and I really want to see improvements that will benefit both the end consumer and also the payment service providers and the whole infrastructure as well.
Yeah, I think use cases are incredibly important, right? And being able to offer choice, both on the consumer side and business side.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree.
And there are certain benefits, as we already discussed, right? The only thing is that ultimately the end consumer is not always interested in that the merchant is saving on the transaction, for example, right? What they care about is how ultimately they will complete that transaction, whether the payment method is known to them, whether they're familiar with the checkout experience. But that's the PIS part, and ultimately, open banking has a great long way to go, in my opinion.
I really like the point you made about the use cases, because that's exactly what we're seeing. Is it's sort of account-to-account payments, particularly sort of pay-by-bank systems based on open banking, are being used for often financial transactions. People moving money between their own financial accounts tends to be sort of relatively high-value movements. But another potential interesting use case is subscriptions, where actually some of the older national direct debit or standing order systems are actually quite clunky. They're based on 15, 20, 30-year-old technology. And they're fine if you're buying a weekly newspaper, which everyone does, the same amount every week, that works. But as soon as you're trying to order slightly different goods, you're changing your Amazon order every week or whatever, they're no longer fit for purpose. And so, there are opportunities where there are use cases where actually it doesn't work brilliantly for customers or merchants today. So where we maybe we'll see greater adoption of account-to-account payments.
Absolutely. And you see that also in other parts of the world, right, where ACH or batch payments are moving a number of use cases into real-time payments. So absolutely, I think that kind of secular shift is already underway.
One of the things we haven't really talked about is fraud. And to me, fraud is actually one of the big catalysts of innovation in payments, because we have to address it. Andy, obviously you're not going to talk about Monzo specifically getting hit by fraud, but are you aware of sort of consumers in general sort of becoming more victim to fraud? Obviously, we have a variety of increasingly sophisticated frauds. Obviously, we've got AI fakes, deep fakes, and so on. There's a lot of emerging threats. How do you think about fraud and payments and protecting your customers?
Look, it's constantly evolving. I think when I much like my sort of asynchronous synchronous analogy earlier, when I compare a card payment and a faster payment, the depth and the richness of the data that you get to see when making a transaction decision on a card payment is like, it's huge. You've got all these data attributes. You can be pretty sure you're going to let that transaction happen or not. On a faster payment, it's pretty limited. There's not a huge amount in there, and actually, for us to start filling up that schema or that data set of what is the merchant category code for that account number and sort code, what is the industry that seller's in, all that sort of stuff that you see on a card payment, I think there's massive potential to close the gap.
Do you agree, Ugne? Is data one of the keys to it? Do we need faster global adoption of sort of ISO 20022? I never know how to say it. Do merchants? Do you need more data on transactions?
Absolutely. I mean, this is how most modern also AI fraud systems also make decisions as well, right? So the more data points, exactly what Andy said. So the more data points we have, the better the decision we also can make, right? Because also in some cases, the rules are preset by the payment service provider, because we know our clients, we know where they are operating, depending exactly on the MCC code and all of this kind of stuff. So data-driven decisions, of course, are it's paramount for any business. I mean, we have to think about fraud so maintaining and basically preventing fraud is one of the most important things for a payment service provider in general, right? Because that also keeps the trust between the merchant and ourselves. And in general, it also helps, prevent, losses, which is very important. But without data and being able to make those decisions, it would be very difficult, right? So the more key points we have and data points we have, the better we are making that leap. And we, for example, partner ourselves with a company called Sift, and they are a really great fraud prevention system. And all of our transactions, for example, are run, through that. But without that, we still have a lot of ways, how we monitor transactions, and we monitor all of the points, that we see in the systems in order to prevent, from fraud, taking place. So, of course, if it is limited, then you have to also think about, other ways of how do you prevent fraud, and what are other options in this case then.
Thank you. So we're running out of time. So I'd like to close by sort of throwing a big question to all three of you in turn, which is what are some of the biggest areas of innovation that you think the industry as a whole needs to try and tackle? What are some of the real areas of pain that we need to try and improve for consumers and merchants over the next 5 years? I mean, we've managed to have this whole conversation without really talking about AI or stable coins, so there's a lot more we could unpack here. But if you sort of take a step back, where do you think is the sort of the areas where we most need to see sort of improvements or innovation, or even sort of regulatory action? Helena, I know that's an impossibly big question, but what do you think are some of the most important things we need to see over the next few years to make payments work better?
So for me, it's definitely kind of how to leverage modern technology to enable innovation on top of the rails, but also keeping it incredibly secure. So I think cybersecurity is just key. If you don't have that foundation, you can innovate as much as you want on top, but that just will crumble if you don't have that ability to share data, train models, and really be at the forefront of scam and kind of fraud protection to ensure you're keeping your company and your customers safe. So for me, definitely cyber and fraud prevention.
Andy, what would you like to see?
Just for organizations to continue just to build with product market fit in mind. Like all of our customers will vote with their feet. If the UX is great, they'll use it. And if it's not, they won't. And then sort of a separate one, different lens. We need to make some really serious inroads about getting that payments infrastructure that powers faster payments and backs out of data centers and into the cloud and modern and future-proof. I think that'll be quite exciting to watch as a bit of a payments nerd. Yeah.
Love it. Ugne, what are your thoughts?
I think Andy stole a little bit of my point. But I will try to rephrase it. And for me, maybe I will be a little bit boring in that sense as well. I think we should not really be chasing trends. I think we should develop and build solutions that are catering for the challenges, that the clients and then consumers are facing. And I think if that is focused on all of the things that already exist and just making them really better and more suited for the needs, I think that's really what I'm looking for. And I really want to be, 5 years, down the line, having a chat, with you guys and Andy and saying, okay, we also don't have, the same problems in terms of, infrastructure speed and, and all of this kind of stuff. But coming back to the main point is that, there's a lot of complexity what we discuss and managing all of those things, in one place, it's challenging. So I would really like to see, fraud prevention and security and complexity being, improved. But we already discovered that that's quite a difficult challenge in general. So hopefully in 5 years' time, there will be improvement in all of those directions.
Indeed. Well, that wraps up today's discussion. Thank you so much to the three of you. You've been fantastic. There have been so many insights. Honestly, I wish we'd had several episodes on this because it's such a huge topic. But thank you. This has been great. Where can people find out a little bit more about you and sort of maybe connect with you? Helena, where can people find out a little bit more about you and your work at Mastercard?
Probably the easiest way, LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Ugne, where can people find out more about you and Payable?
Absolutely the same. They can find out all of the information there on LinkedIn and also about my challenge in Ironman and other things. So please do go to my LinkedIn page and
And Andy, where can people find out more about you and about Monzo?
I'm a sporadic LinkedIn user, so sometimes on there, but otherwise the Monzo website is a great place to read up about what we're up to, or our blog or our community forum.
And you can find me, Benjamin Ensor, on LinkedIn, also somewhat sporadically. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow the podcast. Please leave us a review or let your friends and colleagues know about the podcast. If you want to join the conversation, seek us out on social media. Just search for 11FS or FinTech Insider, or email us at podcasts@11fs.com. So thank you so much to my 3 guests again, and thank you all for listening. Bye-bye.
In today's fast-changing digital world, proving your company is trustworthy isn't just important for growth, it's essential. And that's why Vanta is here. Vanta helps companies of all sizes get compliant fast and stay that way with industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. So whether you're a startup tackling your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or an enterprise manager vendor risk, Vanta's trust management platform makes it quicker, easier, and more scalable. Vanta also helps you complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, so you can win bigger deals sooner. The results? According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers slash over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive. Establishing trust isn't optional. Vanta makes it automatic. Visit vanta.com/insider to sign up for a free demo today. That's VANTA.com/insider.